The ship appeared on a cold Tuesday morning in December. It came from the darkness beyond Neptune, drifting like a wounded whale through the empty sea of space. Admiral Kong Tai-ho stood on the bridge of the UTS Horizon and watched the alien vessel grow larger on his screen. He had served 40 years in the fleet. He had seen battles and rebellions and things that still visited him in his dreams. But he had never seen anything like this. The alien ship was massive. It stretched nearly 8 kilometers from end to end, covered in strange patterns that seemed to glow with soft blue light. But what caught Tai-ho's attention was the damage. Great holes had been torn through its hull. Scorch marks covered its surface like old wounds. This ship had been in a fight, and it had barely survived. "Sir, we are receiving a signal," Lieutenant Beak Sora said from her station. She was young, only 32, but her eyes held the hard look of someone who had seen too much too soon. Her brother served on the outer colonies. She worried about him constantly. "What kind of signal?" Tai-ho asked. "It repeats every 40 seconds. Same pattern. We cannot understand the language." Tai-ho nodded slowly. "Get me Dr. Park Yuna. Tell her we need her expertise immediately." Dr. Park Yuna arrived within the hour. Transported from the First Contact Division on Earth, she was small and thin, with glasses that seemed too large for her face and a nervous energy that filled every room she entered. At 35, she was the best xenolinguist humanity had ever produced, though she would blush and deny it if anyone said so. "The signal is simple in structure," Yuna explained as she worked at her console. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic keyboard. "They want us to understand. They are making it easy on purpose." "What does it say?" Tai-ho asked. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were wet with tears. "It says, 'We come seeking refuge. We do not know war. Please.' They follow." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stopped what they were doing and stared at the screen where the wounded ship drifted helplessly through space. "They follow," Sora repeated quietly. "That does not sound good." "No," Tai-ho agreed. "It does not." 3 days later, Tai-ho led a small team aboard the alien vessel. They wore full combat suits, but Yuna had insisted they carry no visible weapons. "If they truly do not know war, weapons will only frighten them," she had argued. Tai-ho had reluctantly agreed. The interior of the ship was unlike anything human. The walls curved organically, covered in the same glowing patterns they had seen outside. The air was breathable, but smelled of flowers and something else, something sad, like the memory of rain on a funeral day. They found the aliens in a great central chamber. There were thousands of them, huddled together in groups. They were tall and slender, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their eyes were large and dark, filled with an intelligence that was immediately obvious. But it was their expressions that struck Tai-ho most deeply. They looked at the humans with a mixture of hope and fear and something else. Trust. "They are called the Villani," Yuna translated as one of the aliens stepped forward. It was older than the others, its skin more silver than colorful. Its voice was like music, each word carrying emotions that bypassed the ears and went straight to the heart. "This is Elder Luminara. She leads them," Luminara spoke, and Yuna translated. "She says their world is gone. An empire called the Dominion of Krath came to their system 100 years ago. The Krath conquer and destroy. They take everything. The Villani had no weapons. They had never needed them. They did not even understand the concept of war until the Krath showed them." Tai-ho felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many survived? 12,000. Out of 8 billion? The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 12,000 survivors from an entire civilization. Tai-ho had seen massacres before, but nothing on this scale. Nothing even close. "Why did they come here?" Sora asked. Her voice was harder than usual. She was suspicious by nature, and the mention of pursuers had put her on edge. Luminara seemed to understand the question before Yuna translated it. She spoke directly to Sora, her musical voice carrying waves of sorrow. "She says they detected our radio signals centuries ago," Yuna explained. "They studied us from afar. They saw our wars, our violence. They were afraid of us. But when the Krath came, they had nowhere else to go. They hoped that a species that understood war might also understand mercy. Taiho closed his eyes. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. These beings had fled across the stars, chased by monsters, hoping that humans, violent, bloody, war-making humans might somehow be their salvation. The Kraths are following them, Taiho said. It was not a question. Yes, Yuna confirmed. They do not know how far behind, but they are coming. Taiho thought of Earth. He thought of the colonies, of the billions of human lives spread across a dozen worlds. He thought of his grandchildren on Luna, of the parks where they played, and the schools where they learned. And he thought of this ship full of refugees, 12,000 souls, who had lost everything and still found the courage to hope. Sir, Sora said quietly, if we help them, we bring a war to our doorstep. A war we did not ask for. I know, Taiho replied. The coalition will have to decide. This is too big for us. I know that too. But even as he said it, Taiho knew what his recommendation would be. He looked at Luminara, at her dark eyes filled with desperate hope, and he made a decision in his heart that his mouth would not speak for many days yet. The coalition debate lasted 2 weeks. Politicians shouted at each other across holographic conference rooms. Some demanded that the Villani be turned away. Others argued that humanity had a moral duty to help. Protests erupted on Earth and the colonies. The whole human species seemed to hold its breath, waiting. In the end, the vote was close. 53% in favor of granting asylum. Humanity would shelter the Villani. Dr. Yuna was with Luminara when the news arrived. The elder wept, her tears glowing faintly silver in the dim light of the ship. Thank you, she said in broken human speech, the first word she had learned. Thank you. But even as the Villani celebrated, deep space sensors detected something at the edge of human-monitored space. Ships. Hundreds of them. Moving fast, the Krath had arrived, and humanity was about to learn what it truly meant to give both peace and war. The first battle happened at Colony Henom 4, a small mining world at the edge of human space. Captain Nojiho was 31 years old and hungry for glory. He commanded the destroyer UTS Indomitable with a crew of 200 souls. And when the Krath scout fleet appeared on his sensors, he did not hesitate. All hands to battle stations, Jiho ordered. His voice was calm, but his heart pounded with excitement. This was what he had trained for. This was his moment. Launch fighters. Arm all weapons? Today we show these invaders what humanity is made of. The Krath scouts were smaller than expected. 3 vessels, each about half the size of the Indomitable. They moved with an arrogance that suggested they had never faced real opposition. Their first shots went wide, as if they expected the human ships to flee. They did not flee. Jiho's squadron tore into the Krath with a fury that surprised even their own. The crews. Missiles streaked through the void. Railgun rounds punched through alien hulls. Within 20 minutes, all 3 Krath vessels were burning wreckage. But victory came with a price. The destroyer Mokpo took a direct hit to its reactor. It exploded in a flash of white light, taking 93 lives with it. Among the dead was Lieutenant Beak Junho, Sora's younger brother. When Sora received the news, she was standing on the bridge of the horizon beside Admiral Taiho. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled, but she did not cry. She simply nodded, excused herself, and walked to her quarters. She did not come out for 3 days. General Yun Dojan arrived on the horizon a week after the battle. He was a large man with a shaved head and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. As head of coalition defense, he had the authority to override even Taiho in military matters. The Villani are a problem, Doyan said bluntly as they walked through the corridors. Every day we shelter them is a day we invite more attacks. They have nowhere else to go, Taiho replied. That is their problem, not ours. Taiho stopped walking. He turned to face the general, and something in his expression made even Do-Yin pause. We voted to help them. The coalition decided, we do not abandon people simply because helping them is difficult. Do-Yin stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, a harsh sound without humor. You always were too soft, Taiho, but fine. We will fortify the outer colonies. We will prepare for war. And when the real Krath fleet arrives, we will see if your mercy was worth the cost. Dr. Yuna spent her days with the Villani, learning their language, their history, their culture. The more she learned, the more she understood why they had never developed weapons. Violence was literally unthinkable to them. Their brains were not built for it. When they witnessed the battle at Henamfor, many of them became physically ill. Your people confuse us, Elder Luminara told Yuna one evening. They sat together in a garden that the Villani had created aboard their ship, filled with plants from their dead world. You have such capacity for kindness, Dr. Yuna. You sit with me for hours, learning our songs, sharing our grief. You treat us with gentleness that brings tears to my eyes. But, Yuna asked, sensing more coming, but you also have such capacity for destruction. We watched your captain Jeho in battle. He smiled, Yuna. He smiled as he destroyed those ships. How can both things exist in the same species? How do you not tear yourselves apart? Yuna thought about the question for a long time. I do not know, she admitted finally. We have been asking ourselves that question for thousands of years. We have no answer. We simply are what we are. Luminara's skin shifted to a deep blue, the color of sorrow. Your people carry both the sun and the void within you. We do not understand how you survive yourselves. The Krath envoy arrived 1 month after the battle. It was a single ship, painted black, broadcasting a signal that demanded attention. Admiral Taiho agreed to receive their message. The Krath commander appeared on the view screen. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick gray scales. His eyes burned with a contempt that needed no translation. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am Warlord Thravix, of the Dominion of Krath. You have taken what belongs to us. The Villani are our property, marked for extinction. You will surrender them to us immediately. And if we refuse? Taiho asked calmly. Thravix laughed. It was an ugly sound. Then you will be exterminated alongside them. You are primitive creatures. Your weapons are toys. Your ships are garbage. You have never faced a true war. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have erased 100 species from existence. You are nothing to us. Nothing. Taiho felt Sora stiffen beside him. He felt the anger radiating from every officer on the bridge. But he kept his voice steady. You have 1 month, Thravix continued. 1 of your solar months to deliver the Villani. After that, we will come for them. And we will burn everything in our path. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Sir, Sora said quietly, What are your orders? Taiho stood motionless for a long moment. He thought of his grandchildren. He thought of the Villani refugees. He thought of Lieutenant Junho, burned to atoms in the void of space. And he thought of Thravix's arrogant face, so certain of his own superiority. My orders, Taiho said slowly, are to begin full military mobilization. Every colony becomes a fortress. Every civilian ship gets retrofitted for combat. Every factory starts producing weapons. And the ultimatum? Sora pressed. Taiho turned to her. For the first time in weeks, there was something like fire in his old eyes. Tell the Coalition to prepare a response. We will deliver it to the Dominion in exactly 1 month. What response, sir? Taiho's jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent bridge like the tolling of a bell. Tell them that humanity does not surrender its friends. Tell them that we did not seek this war. But if they want one, they will get one. And tell them this, we may be primitive, but we have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We are very, very good at it. Sora nodded. For the first time since her brother's death, a ghost of a smile crossed her face. The countdown to war had begun. The month of preparation passed like a fever dream. Factories that had been sleeping for decades roared back to life. Shipyards worked around the clock, their workers sleeping in shifts, pushing themselves beyond exhaustion. Across human space, billions of people watched the news and waited, knowing that something terrible was coming. Engineer Shinhana was 67 years old when they called her out of retirement. She had designed weapons for the Coalition during the Mars insurrection 30 years ago. Some of those weapons still gave her nightmares. She had promised herself she would never build such things again. But when Admiral Tai-Ho personally came to her home on Earth, she listened. "I need something that can break them," Tai-Ho said simply. They sat in her small kitchen, drinking tea, as if they were discussing the weather. Not just defeat them. Break them. Make them afraid. Hannah's hands trembled around her cup. "You do not know what you are asking." "I know exactly what I am asking. I am asking you to build something terrible so that our children might live. I am asking you to carry a burden that will haunt you for whatever years remain. I am asking too much." He paused. "But I am asking anyway." Hannah stared at the tea leaves floating in her cup. She thought of her grandson, who was 7 years old and loved to catch butterflies in the garden. She thought of what the Krath would do to him if they won. "There is something I designed once," she said quietly. "During the insurrection, it was too dangerous to use. Too horrible. We locked the plans away and swore never to speak of it again."
"Tell me!" Tana closed her eyes.
"We called it the Sunfire Protocol. It turns a ship's reactor into a weapon. A single shot can vaporize everything within 100 kilometers. But the energy required would destroy the ship that fires it." She opened her eyes. "It is a suicide weapon, Admiral." "One-way trip?" Tai-Ho nodded slowly. "Build it. But make it so the crew can eject before firing. That would reduce effectiveness by 40%. Then reduce it. I want to win, but not at the cost of becoming what we fight against." On Luna Base, Sergeant Moon Q trained Marines for the coming invasion. He was 43, with a scar running down his left cheek and a voice like gravel. His soldiers both feared and loved him, which was exactly how he wanted it. "The Krath are Big Q," told his troops as they ran combat drills in the underground tunnels. "They are strong. They have conquered 1,000 worlds, and they think that makes them invincible. But they have never fought humans. They have never fought creatures who refuse to die." He stopped a young private who was struggling with her weapon. "What is your name?" "Private Lee, Yuri, sir." "Private Lee, why do we fight?" Yuri hesitated. "To protect Earth, sir?" "Wrong." Q's voice softened slightly. "We fight because someone has to. We fight because there are people behind us who cannot fight for themselves. 12,000 Villani are counting on us. Billions of humans are counting on us. When you are tired, when you are scared, when you want to give up, remember that. You are all that stands between them and the darkness." Yuri straightened her spine. "Yes, sir." "Good. Now run the drill again. Faster this time." Dr. Yuna discovered the weakness by accident. She was reviewing Villani historical records when she noticed a pattern in how the Krath communicated during battles. They relied on a rigid command structure. Every order came from the top. Individual ship captains had almost no authority to make decisions on their own. "They have never needed to adapt," Yuna explained to Admiral Tai-Ho. "Every species they have conquered has been predictable. The Villani fled. Others surrendered. No one has ever surprised them. Do you think we can surprise them? I think chaos might be our greatest weapon. The more unexpected our tactics, the more confused they will become. Their commanders will not know how to respond to things they have never seen before." Tai-Ho smiled grimly. "If there is one thing humanity excels at, it is chaos." The Villani struggled with guilt as the days passed. Elder Luminara came to Tai-Ho one evening, her skin pale with distress. "We have brought this upon you," she said through Yuna's translation. "All this death, all this suffering, it is because of us. Let me surrender myself to the Krath. Perhaps they will be satisfied with my life alone." Tai-Ho shook his head. "You know that is not true. They will not stop with you. They will not stop with the Villani. Creatures like the Krath never stop. They consume and destroy until there is nothing left. Then why help us at all? You could have turned us away. You could have preserved your peace." Tai-Ho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of 60 years of living. "You asked us for peace. We could not give you only that. Our nature does not allow it. But we can give you something else. we can give you survival. And perhaps, when this is over, we can build a peace together that is worth keeping." Luminara's eyes filled with silver tears. "You are strange creatures, Admiral. Terrible and beautiful all at once." "Yes," Taiho agreed. "We are." The month ended on a clear winter morning. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the UTS Horizon, now the flagship of the combined human fleet. Around him, 300 warships waited in formation. Behind them, the orbital defenses of Earth bristled with weapons. Every colony had been fortified. Every ship had been armed. Humanity had done everything it could. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. The Krath were coming with 3,000 ships, 10 times humanity's numbers. But no one spoke of surrender. No one suggested running. "Incoming transmission," Lieutenant Sora reported. Her voice was steady now, hardened by grief into something like steel. "It is the Krath, Warlord." Thravix appeared on screen. His scaled face twisted with contempt. "Your month has ended, primitives. Will you surrender the Villani?" Taiho straightened his uniform. He looked directly into the camera, into the eyes of the creature that had destroyed worlds. "I have a message from the United Terran Coalition," he said calmly. "We did not seek this war. We offered you the chance to leave in peace. You refused. So be it." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "We will not surrender our friends. We will not abandon those who came to us for help. And we will not be conquered by bullies who mistake cruelty for strength." Thravix snarled. "Then you have chosen extinction." "No," Taiho replied. "We have chosen to fight. And there is something you should know about humanity, Warlord. We have been fighting each other since before your species learned to walk upright. We have perfected the art of war over 10,000 years of bloody history. We are not the victims you are accustomed to. We are something far worse." He leaned forward slightly. "We are predators who choose to be kind, and you have given us a reason to stop choosing." The transmission ended. Deep space sensors lit up with contacts. The Krath Armada was entering the Sol system. The Battle of Sol had begun. The first wave of Krath. Ships entered weapons range at exactly 0600 hours, Earth Standard Time. 300 human vessels faced 3,000 enemy warships. The math was simple and terrible. Every human ship would have to destroy 10 Krath vessels just to break even. "Admiral." Taiho watched the enemy formation on his tactical display. The Krath moved in perfect lines, disciplined and orderly, each ship exactly where it was supposed to be. They expected humanity to form similar lines. They expected an organized, predictable battle. They did not get one. Captain Jiho Taiho said into his communicator, "Execute Chaos Protocol." Jiho's voice crackled back, barely containing his excitement. With pleasure, Admiral Buttes, indomitable, surged forward, leading a squadron of 40 destroyers in a pattern that made no military sense. They scattered like startled birds, weaving between enemy ships, attacking from impossible angles, retreating and returning without warning. The Krath commanders issued orders to intercept. But by the time those orders reached their ships, the human vessels had already moved somewhere else. "What are they doing?" Warlord Thravix demanded from his command ship at the rear of the formation. "They have no formation. They have no discipline. This is madness." His tactical officer struggled to respond. "They are not following any pattern we recognize, Warlord. Our targeting systems cannot predict their movements." "Then fire everywhere. Destroy them all." But it was not that simple. The Krath ships were not designed for close-quarters chaos. Their weapons were meant for long-range bombardment of stationary targets. When human ships darted between them at close range, they risked hitting each other. Captain Jiho laughed as he dodged between two massive Krath carriers. "They cannot adapt," he shouted to his crew. Dr. Yuno was right. "They have no idea how to handle us." His ship shuddered as a near miss scraped their shields, but Jiho did not slow down. He did not retreat. He pushed deeper into the enemy formation, and his squadron followed. On the lunar surface, Sergeant Q and his Marines waited in the tunnels beneath Luna Base. They knew the orbital battle would eventually come to them. The Krath would try to land troops, to take the high ground above Earth. It was what any competent military would do. Remember your training? Q told his soldiers through the helmet communicators. They are bigger than us. They are stronger than us. But these tunnels are dark and narrow, and we know every centimeter of them. This is our ground. Make them pay for every step. The first Krath landing pods hit the surface at 0900 hours. Massive scaled warriors poured out, their weapons humming with deadly energy. They marched toward the base entrances with the confidence of conquerors. They never saw the mines. Explosions tore through the Krath ranks. Before they could recover, human Marines emerged from hidden positions and opened fire. The aliens were tough, but they were not invincible. And in the confined spaces of the lunar tunnels, their size became a disadvantage. Hold the line. Q roared as he fired his rifle into a charging Krath soldier. They do not pass. They do not get one step closer to Earth. The battle raged for 3 days. In orbit, the human fleet was slowly being pushed back. Despite their chaotic tactics, despite their fierce resistance, the numbers were simply too overwhelming. For every Krath ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The carrier Gwangju was torn apart by concentrated fire. The cruiser Daegu exploded when its reactor was breached. Ship after ship fell, their crews dying in fire and vacuum. Lieutenant Beak Sora watched her tactical display as another green flickered and disappeared. Another ship gone. Another 100 lives ended. She thought of her brother, burned to nothing at Henham 4. She thought of her parents on Earth, watching the battle on their screens, praying for victory. "Sir," she said to Admiral Taiho, her voice strained but steady, "we are down to 60% strength. If this continues, we will be overwhelmed within 2 hours." Taiho nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come. He had hoped it would not, but he had prepared for it. "Signal the Sunfire ships," he said quietly. "Tell them to begin their approach." 20 modified destroyers broke from the human formation. Each one carried Engineer Hannah's terrible creation. Each one was crewed by volunteers who knew they might not return. The first Sunfire detonation occurred at 1347 hours. A human destroyer named Chunshin activated its weapon and released a burst of energy that turned everything within 100 kilometers into vapor. 300 Krath ships vanished in an instant. The Chunshin's crew ejected seconds before firing, their escape pods tumbling through the aftermath of their own destruction. Warlord Bravix watched in horror as nearly 1/10 of his fleet disappeared in a single flash. What was that? He screamed at his officers. What weapon is that? No one could answer him. The second Sunfire detonation took another 200 ships. Then a third, and a fourth. The Krath formation began to crumble as panic spread through their ranks. They had never seen anything like this. They had never imagined that a species would build weapons designed to destroy their own ships along with the enemy. "They are insane," Thravix whispered. "They are completely insane." On Luna, Sergeant Q fell back through the tunnels, his Marines dying around him. They had held for 3 days, far longer than anyone had expected. But they were running out of ammunition, running out of soldiers, running out of time. "Fall back to Section 7, Q ordered. His voice was hoarse from shouting. Blood ran down his face from a wound he did not remember receiving. "We hold as long as we can." Privately, Yori was beside him, her rifle smoking from continuous fire. "Sergeant, we cannot hold much longer." "Then we die holding," Q replied simply. "But we do not run." In orbit, Lieutenant Sora made a decision. Her destroyer, the Pohang, had been crippled by Krath fire. Its engines were destroyed. Its weapons were offline, but its reactor still functioned. "Sir," she said to Admiral Tai-Ho over the communicator, "the Pohang is finished, but we can still serve." Tai-Ho understood immediately. "Sora, no. There must be another way." "There is no other way, sir. The Krath carrier in Sector 9 is preparing to launch landing craft toward Earth. If they reach the surface, millions will die. We can stop them." Tai-Ho closed his eyes. He thought of the young lieutenant he had watched grow from a nervous ensign into a decorated officer. He thought of her brother, already gone. He thought of their parents, who would lose both children in this war. "Sora," he said softly. "Thank you. Tell my parents I did my duty, sir. Tell them I was not afraid." The Pohang accelerated toward the Krath carrier, its crippled form trailing fire and debris. The enemy ship tried to turn, tried to fire, but it was too slow, too large, too confident. The collision was visible from Earth. The carrier split in half, its landing bays destroyed, its troops vaporized. And somehow, impossibly, the Pohang's escape pods ejected in the final seconds. Lieutenant Sora lived, though she would spend 3 months in a hospital recovering from her injuries. Dr. Yuna broadcast her message at 1500 hours. Hacked into the Krath communication network by coalition programmers, her voice, speaking the Krath language she had learned from Villani records, reached every ship in the enemy fleet. "We are humanity. We sought peace, but you chose war. Now you face both. You thought us primitive? You thought us weak? You were wrong. Go home. Tell your masters what you witnessed here. Tell them that humanity has awakened. And tell them this: we would rather burn with our friends than kneel to our enemies." Warlord Thravix listened to the message in silence. Around him, his fleet was in chaos. Nearly half his ships were gone. The humans were still fighting, still dying, still refusing to surrender. "We cannot win this," his tactical officer said quietly. "Not today." Thravix's scaled hands tightened on his command throne. Rage filled him, but beneath the rage was something he had never felt before. Fear. "Retreat," he growled. "All ships, retreat." The Krath armada turned and fled, but not before one final act of spite. Thravix ordered a concentrated bombardment of Earth itself. His remaining ships fired everything they had toward the blue planet before jumping to faster-than-light speed. Most of the missiles were intercepted. Most, but not all. Busan Megacity vanished in nuclear fire, taking 12 million lives with it. Among the dead was the family of Dr. Park Yuna. The silence after battle was always the worst. Admiral Kong Tai-ho stood on the observation deck of the horizon and looked out at the debris field that had once been a battlefield. Thousands of wrecked ships drifted through space, some human, most Krath. Bodies floated among the wreckage. So many bodies, they had one. Humanity had faced an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds, and they had driven it back. The Krath armada was fleeing toward the edge of the system, broken and bleeding. Their warlord's pride shattered into pieces, but victory did not feel like victory. 12 million dead in Busan, another 50,000 sailors and marines lost in the battle itself. Dozens of ships destroyed, years of resources burned away in a few desperate days, and through it all, the question hung in the air like smoke. What now? General Yoon Do-yan wanted blood. He stormed onto the Horizon's bridge the day after the battle, his face twisted with rage. "We must pursue them," he demanded. "We have the momentum. We have the anger. Every citizen on Earth is screaming for revenge. If we strike now, while they are weak, we can end this permanently." "End it how?" Tai-ho asked quietly. "Burn their worlds. Exterminate them as they have exterminated others. Show the galaxy that humanity is not to be crossed." Tai-ho was silent for a long moment. He thought of his grandchildren, safe on Luna, crying for the friends they had lost in Busan. He thought of Lieutenant Sora, still in the hospital, learning that her survival had cost her everything she had. He thought of Dr. Yuna, who had not spoken since learning of her family's death. "No," he said finally. Do-yan stared at him in disbelief. "No, Admiral, they murdered 12 million of our people. They would have murdered us all if they could." "How can you possibly, because that is not who we are," Tai-ho interrupted. His voice was calm but firm. "We fought this war to protect the innocent. If we become destroyers of worlds, we become the very thing we fought against. We lose ourselves. The people demand justice. The people demand blood. Those are not the same thing." Tai-ho turned to face the general directly. "I lost friends in this battle. I lost sailors I had served with for decades. I feel the same anger you do. But I will not lead humanity down a path that ends with us becoming the next Krath. The argument raged for days in the coalition chambers. Some leaders sided with Dojon, demanding total war. Others supported Taiho's more measured approach. The debate grew so heated that some feared a civil conflict might erupt alongside the external war. In the end, it was Dr. Park Yuna who decided the matter. She appeared before the Coalition Council on the 7th day after the battle. She was thin and pale, her eyes hollow with grief. But her voice was steady as she spoke. "I have more reason to want revenge than anyone in this room," she said. "My parents are dead. My sister is dead. My niece and nephew, who I used to read stories to before bed, are dead. If anyone should be calling for the destruction of the Krath, it should be me." She paused, gathering herself. "But I spent the past year learning the Villani language, learning their history, learning why they do not understand violence, and I realized something. The Krath are what they are because of choices their ancestors made long ago. They chose conquest over cooperation. They chose fear over friendship. And every generation since has followed that path, unable to imagine anything else." She looked around the chamber. "If we choose revenge, if we become destroyers, we begin walking the same path. Maybe not today, maybe not for 100 years, but eventually we will become the monsters we see in the mirror. Is that the legacy we want to leave our children? Is that who we want to be?" The chamber was silent. No one moved. "I choose differently," Yuna continued. "I choose to honor my family's memory by building something better, not by tearing something down." The vote that followed was overwhelming. Humanity would not pursue the Krath to their homeworlds. Instead, the Coalition fleet would establish a defensive perimeter and issue a single message to the Dominion. "We could burn your worlds as you burned ours. We have the fire. We have the will. We have proven that we can match your cruelty with our own, but we choose not to. This is your one chance. Leave us in peace, and we will leave you in peace. Attack again, and there will be no mercy left. There will only be fire." The message was broadcast across every frequency in every language the Coalition could translate. And then they waited. The Krath did not respond. Not directly, but in the weeks that followed, reports began filtering back from the edges of known space. Other species, long subjugated by the Dominion, were rising up. The news of humanity's victory had spread like wildfire across 100 worlds. If these strange, violent apes could defeat the Krath, perhaps they could too. Within a year, the Dominion was fighting on a dozen fronts. Within 5 years, it had collapsed entirely, fractured into warring factions that were too busy fighting each other to threaten anyone else. The Villani watched these events with a mixture of wonder and sorrow. Their gentle souls had been forever changed by their exposure to humanity. They could not become warriors themselves, but they had learned to understand those who could. Elder Luminara visited Admiral Taiho on the anniversary of the battle. They sat together in his quarters, sharing tea as they had many times before. "We have learned much from your people," Luminara said. Her skin was calmer now, the colors more stable. "We have learned that darkness is not always evil. Sometimes it is simply the shadow cast by those who stand in the light, protecting others." Taiho smiled sadly. "We have learned from you as well. We have remembered that our capacity for destruction is not what defines us. It is how we choose to use it." "You could have conquered the galaxy," Luminara observed. "You have the strength, the determination, the terrifying creativity. Why did you stop?" Taiho considered the question. "Because conquest is easy," he said finally. "Any brute can destroy. But building something that lasts, something beautiful, something worth protecting, that takes real strength. We fought this war to preserve something precious. It would be foolish to destroy ourselves in the process of saving it." The memorial in Busan was completed on the 5th anniversary of the attack. It was a simple structure, a wall of names stretching toward the sky. With an eternal flame burning at its base, Dr. Yuna attended the ceremony. Now older, her hair streaked with gray, a young Villani approached her afterward. She was studying human psychology at Seoul University, one of the first of her kind to do so. Dr. Park, the young Villani, said, "I have studied your species for 3 years now. I have read your history, your literature, your philosophy, but there is one thing I still do not understand." "What is that?" Yuna asked. "Why did you help us?" "You knew what it would cost. You knew the Krath would come. You knew your people would die. Why did you choose to save us anyway?" Yuna looked at the wall of names. She thought of her parents, her sister, her niece and nephew. She thought of Lieutenant Junho and the sailors of the Mokpo. She thought of 12 million strangers whose names she would never know. And she smiled. "Because that is who we are," she said softly. "We fight, we grieve, we rebuild, we forgive. We carry both the sword and the olive branch. We hold the capacity for terrible destruction and beautiful creation in the same hands. We are contradiction and chaos, and somehow, impossibly, we keep walking forward." She turned to face the young Villani. "You asked us for peace. We gave you everything we had, the peace and the war and the pain and the hope. Because in the end, they are all part of the same thing. They are all part of being human. Above them, the sky was blue and clear. Somewhere beyond it, on a world that had once been scarred by war, human children played alongside Villani, children in gardens that bloomed with flowers from 2 different worlds. The memorial flame burned on, and humanity, terrible and beautiful, violent and gentle, continued to walk its impossible path between the darkness and the light.